So is the deal done when it closes?
Absolutely not.
So I'm joined here today by my friend and colleague, Mark Ledlove, who is an expert on navigating post-closing disputes. And Mark, I'd love to get your take. Why is it the case that they're often not done at closing?
Well, Bob, as a matter of course, you're going to have various provisions in an agreement, whether it's a stock purchase agreement or an asset purchase agreement, where at the closing there's going to have to be certain adjustments that have gone on and occurred to account for certain changes in the business from the time the deal was struck to the time the deal closed. One of the typical ones, as is the working capital adjustment. I mean, that just is a matter of course. So that of course is going to happen, and there are often disputes that arise because the parties disagree with how working capital should be classified, what should be considered part of working capital, what isn't, and various adjustments that a buyer will try to make typically to those accounts. So that's one example of where you're typically going to have an issue that comes up, even if the parties have not been adversarial, going into it.
What other types of issues emerge after closing?
Well, after closing, not only do you have the potential for a working capital dispute, something along those lines, you could have an issue with regard to a claim of a breach of a representation or warranty that was made in the purchase agreement. The buyer will have discovered something in the course of its ownership of the entity it's just acquired that is purportedly or allegedly inconsistent with the promises that were made in the purchase agreement. So that comes up. Those are not infrequent. Often the parties are able to work that out. Often there's a way, an indemnification provision in the agreement to cover those. And there's sometimes litigation or arbitration under those. And then of course, my favorite is when the deal lawyers put in the purchase agreement an earn-out provision. We litigators actually refer to that earn-out provision as the invitation to litigate, because there is almost assuredly going to be a dispute about an earn-out provision in the agreement. Now, I realize and I recognize the reason why deal lawyers such as yourself might put something like that in a provision, and that's try to get a deal done, because that's what the goal is. Buyer wants to buy, seller wants to sell, and sometimes you can't agree on the purchase price, and that's a way to bridge the purchase price. But it's really hard to frame those in a way that one party or another is not going to be happy with it. Typically, the seller. So that's three examples that I can come up with on the post-transaction kind of disputes that arise.
That's great. Thanks so much for joining me today, Mark.
My pleasure, Bob. Always great to be with you.